Welcome home. We are WNST, AM 1570, Towson, Baltimore, and Baltimore Positive. We are positively getting our show back out on the road. We're going to be at Costas on Thursday before the Orioles-Yankees game. And then next Tuesday, we're going to be at Pappas. And not the one in Cockeysville, not the one in Bel Air, the new one, not the one down by the DMV on Ritchie Highway in Glen Burnie, the original. We're going to be at Pappas in Parkville. We got great guests this week. Pete Caringi's threatened to come on. Chris Emery's going to be here. Luke's going to be joining me for baseball at Costas on Thursday. And our friends at the Maryland Lottery have given me the Gold Rush Sevens doublers. Top prize $10,000. I did have a $20 winner last week at Coco's. We also had a good time down at Cooper's in Fells Point. All of our friends at Liberty Pure Solutions, keeping my water clean. I'm threatening Doug Workman to come on here and explain how it all works with well water, as well as Jiffy Lube Multicare, keeping the car out on the road. You hear us talk about all of our annual sponsors. Big thanks to Toyota and Wise Markets and Royal Farms, all the people that keep us going around here, putting us out on the road this summer. We got 4th of July doings. We got Heritage Fair next week. And this guy joined me last week for something it's not an annual, it's every other year, Fleet Week. And Fleet Week, now that it's over with, Bill Cole, and by the way, I am sipping my Royal Farms. I went Kona this morning out of the Cole roofing mug. I do not have any Gordian Energy swag to put on at this point, but I do have some Curio swag to put on. Did you linger longer, Fleet Week? I mean, I left you at the bar, and you made friends with Ron Furman and his wife, Gail, and I left you, and I'm like, I got to get the hell out of here. And you're like, I'm in Fells Point. So once you paid to park, I guess there was nowhere else to go. But I left, we run you and me talking about how cool the city was over the weekend.
I hung for a little bit. I think my meter sign told me I had to leave at 5, so I was well behaved.
You milked it.
Yeah, but I just good friends down there, lots of great memories, whatever. It was very vibrant. I told my daughter when I got home that it was like, felt like you were in a different world. Like, that wasn't really the city that I remember or like appreciate. Like, it was just a really vibrant, and there's something about, maybe you don't love people from Philly, but you add a couple extra thousand people from Philly to your city for a baseball game or a weekend.
And they're there to have a good time. They're there to eat and drink. They're on vacation. They are what we are when we go to Nashville for Ravens games. They're here to have fun. And not only that, the weather held up, the baseball held up, the Fleet Week thing happened, and they got an experience, as I talked to them, that we'd want, that Al Hutchinson, that everybody would want them to have in Baltimore.
Yeah, it was phenomenal. There's always these little things you notice that, well, that didn't look like that before COVID, but like all those bars and restaurants down there now that have sort of the permanent temporary outdoor seating and stuff, like
it looks like Paris.
It's really good. And Thames Street's always been sort of that place where you say, I don't really think cars should be on this road. Like, why don't we?
My car's never liked it. I've never had a car that is like Thames Street. No.
Right. Can you imagine if we were driving around with like horses and carts on the back like that? That's terrible. But anyway,
it hurts me in my loins. You know what I mean? Everything just sort of bounces. Like,
I love it as kind of that open air, restaurants and bars and people in the streets, and
there's the
right
New Orleans
water,
New Orleans, and then there's the reality of, everybody's drunk out on the streets in New Orleans, and we don't want that in Fells Point. And I guess that's where, I'll drag Patrick into this, and I can certainly, the Atlas boys, any of the people who have businesses, and Ron Furman, who, when I left you were, he doesn't drink, but you were tilting something there at the bar. Old memories, if nothing else. But I would just say this guy, I've never met the guy who owned the Duck Goose place. He comes out, he gets his 5 cents. Fox News is there to cover it. Fox News is there to cover anything negative. I mean, they are just Johnny on the spot with anything that divides race and like all of that, right? So this guy Monday morning says, I'm out after the most successful weekend of the year. And Patrick's pissed. He's on the news and he's raising hell, and he's my client now. And I've known Patrick 30 years at Cooper's. But what self-serving local business person comes and pisses on Fells Point the weekend after good things happen that I witnessed, that you witnessed, not on anybody's dime, not like I saw the city this weekend. I broadcast for 6 hours in the middle of it on Friday. I went back Saturday and drove mistakenly. I've told this a couple times this week, but my wife and I went to the Jamie Costello party, and we errantly didn't look at the Oriole finishing time as being 6:10 p.m. with
Right.
50,000 people. My wife refused to acknowledge there could possibly be 50,000 people at the Orioles game. I'm like, because she's out of the loop on that. She knows the Orioles treat me like trash, and she just will watch the games or whatever, but she doesn't care about the Orioles, and or following them or know the Phillies are in or know that I told her there's a lot of people, but her foot's in a boot. She's got other problems. And we're in the car and I'm like, we're on 83 and the game's bottom of the eighth inning. The Orioles just scored 2 more runs. It's 5-2. And I'm like, oh my God, we're never going to be able to get across Light Street. There's just
Right.
no way. We made that mistake this weekend. So I had a weekend where we drove into downtown traffic into Fleet Week on Saturday. Thought we were going to have trouble parking the car. We didn't have any trouble parking the car in Key High. We parked right in front of the coffee shop. My wife booted over Leonard Raskin's wheelie, and we saw everybody and no one had any problem getting to Jamie Costello's party Saturday night in South Baltimore, despite the Oriole game. A lot of people came from the game, but like people were out. People are
Right.
out eating. Amici's was packed. Every Ekman had a line out. The city was vibrant, and yet there's still some jackass who owns a business who is already like a discredited figure. I've been discredited by Greg Bader and Chad Steele, but that's it. And popping off on Monday morning, and then this becomes like some story that like Fells Point can't survive. And as Patrick Russell pointed out, as Ron Furman pointed out on my air, Fells Point's an unbelievably vibrant, successful, beautiful, awesome place. And yet Monday morning we're pissing on it after the most successful weekend that I can remember since way before the plague for our city.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, a lot of people have a lot of scars for a lot of neglect and a lot of bad decisions along the way. And I the problem with news cycles these days is you don't really get like intellectual dialogue around topics. You get flashy headline, clickbait, what makes people pay attention for 30 seconds and then they move on anyway. So I don't know. I mean, I was, you know, I mean, I don't think this is like a secret, but like I don't live downtown, right? But I'm on with you and everything I do all the time, supporting the city, trying to help the city. It's an important part of my life, even though I don't live there. Um, but like I'm driving up 95 after sitting with you, basically feeling guilt around not having like taken my daughters and just sort of marched around downtown. My parents didn't really do that with me either. Um, so I don't
Friday
know.
afternoon, if your kids were with you, it would have been a
Yeah,
good time for you from
it
noon
would have
until
been
6 o'clock. Yeah.
I mean, they would have been blown away.
And
That
there's no
that
place for your daughters there after 10 o'clock at night anyway. I mean, there
correct,
isn't, right? I mean,
correct.
that, but
Yeah,
but we need to fix that problem of what we see down there, which is just delinquent loitering and throwing street parties. Which I'm from Dundalk. I'm familiar with putting a six pack in a brown bag and walking around the neighborhood. You know what I mean? Like I know what that is. I come from that a big time.
yeah.
But you can't have that in Fells Point at 11 o'clock at night. Where business
There's
you just
right.
can't.
There's
And
a lot of people who
it's not New Orleans.
right. There's a lot of people who lament the fact that their kids go away to college and never come back, right? And I don't know that you're ever going to really change the go away to college thing because they've built a machine of experience and this is what you're supposed to do and all that good stuff.
Are your
So
kids going to go away for college? How old are your kids? I don't
I
ever
don't
talk
know.
about your
Yeah.
kids, and you're
Well,
private about it. But how old are your kids?
I mean, my son stayed and went to Loyola and
Yep.
graduated, so he's good. Then 14 and 11, so we'll see what's in the cards for them. My assumption is they'll spread their wings a little bit, but
To your point, everybody I know who has kids, and my kid's 39, right? All the people I know, some people like you with more kids. I'm throwing a party in a couple weeks. I have friends that actually have like 12-year-olds are like, can we bring our kids? And I'm like, I hadn't thought about that. I don't know that stance. Most of the people I know, their kids are at Alabama, at somewhere, or on the way to Charleston. Or one of my friend's daughters, I'm hitting her this week. She's looking for an internship. She's 22. I introduced her parents in Dundalk 25 years ago. So, but these younger people, to your point, most of my friends that I keep that are my age, their kids live in Chicago. Their kids live in Detroit. Their kids live in Alabama. Their kids live in Tucson. I mean, I'm just saying out loud, people I'm thinking of right now. And that creates some challenges. I mean, Billick, people say, why is Billick not here? His daughters decided to live in Columbus and they made babies and he needed to be there.
Right.
Where's Marvin? Oh, Marvin's wherever his grandkids are. Like all of these people that disperse, it sort of portends that when grandkids come, it may be taking your life there a little bit. You start to think about that because it's taking your friends' lives that way.
Yeah, and the guilt I felt riding up 95 was this idea that if I had these experiences with them, so that Friday afternoon, it was vibrant, you know, it was this different world-esque that they know. Those are the sort of anchor points, right, that bring them back.
I always
Yeah,
loved Baltimore because I was there the day Harbor Place opened, right? Like, so it was always a special place, even when it was falling apart, and I lived there, and it cost me $500,000. Like, it was always walking through the promenade at the harbor is a special thing to do for anybody. People remember that.
yeah, I just found it to be extremely vibrant. Like we keep using that word ad nauseum, but it was just outer worldly. It was like I think last summer I was in Chicago for a couple days and went down to, I forget what they call it, but it's like this little triangle where there's a bunch of restaurants and it was like a Tuesday night and there
It
was
was
like
Rush Street, probably. You're in Rush
there was
Street?
like 5,000 people. I don't know. You couldn't even get in any of the restaurants or people in the streets. I was like, man, this is great. Like the world's back. Like this, it's another, it's very vibrant. And that I had not experienced in Baltimore in a really long time. Now, granted, I'm not out 10
I
o'clock
lived
on a Friday
downtown for
night.
20
You know
years,
what I
dude.
mean?
So I
Like I'm
saw it
not,
vibrant and I saw it fall apart.
yeah,
And I tried to be a part. I'm still a part of trying to resurrect it. And when it's getting resurrected, like the Orioles are getting fixed, despite
right.
they treat me like trash, they're getting fixed. Look on the field, right? Like, so all at some point, we've acknowledged the harbor is going to get fixed. At some point, somebody, when they're on 95, should just look at that city. It's a little bit like a ghost town, right? Like there's a ghost town in Port Covington that has popped up out of nowhere that at one point will be vibrant. At 1.5, 10 years from now, they'll be full of something. There'll be festivals. There'll be things. There'll be events we go to. We'll put a tie on. If we live long enough, you and I. Well, I won't put a tie on, but you will.
Oh,
And
I haven't worn a tie in a long time.
but then
But
there's Fell's Point, which
but the
has always been the anchor that has had these problems that we yell about, and then we try to get to the reality of what it is, which is what Patrick Russell said on the news on Monday, which is this place is great, except after 9 o'clock on Friday and Saturday, because we've allowed it to become something that it never was, that it doesn't need to be, that isn't functional, that isn't good. And then when Channel 45 has a live feed at 2:15 in the morning waiting for the gunshots to go off, it's not a good thing. And we can all agree with that, but then you and I are down there experiencing this entirely different story that somehow doesn't get told on a Monday morning when some jackwagon owner says, I can't take it anymore. It's awful. It's all awful. No, it wasn't all. There's nothing about what happened this weekend that was awful in Fells Point.
No, it was wonderful. I look, we know human nature is there are complainers and there are people who find, fault in almost anything. And that concept is we're never going to get everyone on this same page about only telling good stories because it's part of the brand.
Well, you're certainly
But
not going to get me on that. That I only tell happy story. Like that. That's where Moeller and I
uh
get sideways because this is not PR. This is
yeah,
journalism. We do things, but people don't know the difference. They
said
think
about yeah,
Ravens.com is journalism. It's PR. It's
said it
beyond PR. It's like this Hard Knocks thing that happened this week. I'm like, Hard Knocks is the most homogenized waste of my time whenever I watch it because it's got 15 layers of editorial
it's
everything, and
still
it's
living
just not any
on,
good.
it's still
Not any
living
good.
on the original awesomeness. But
Right, exactly.
I maybe said a better way because that wasn't entirely what I meant. You and I don't hesitate to discuss things that are not good. However, our mission is to talk about them in a way where we're identifying opportunities in the things that are challenged. That's positive, right?
How do you
That's
make it better? Here's the problem. Here's a
right.
potential solution. That's what.
So there's some people who can't do that, right? They just can't. It's just about complaining and continuing to complain, and then others jump on board. The mission of the city and all of us who want to see it thrive currently is to make our voices louder than all of the rest, right? To overcome the clickbait stories that continue to damage our brand, make it a scary place. Like at some point you're going to travel to another, maybe not you because of your, multi country celebrity, but a normal guy like me will travel to another place. And when I'm asked where I'm from and I say Baltimore, it's going to elicit a different response at some point. Like I'm telling, there's so much good going on right now that isn't obvious. Like the what's it called? The cyber thing that we got from the feds. That's like 20 years of
Well, the bridge is going
money.
to be the centerpiece when I bring Wes Moore on, who, expunged all of these cannabis things from back in the 90s and people that had records that couldn't get jobs. I mean, how many people came to you to be a roofer 15, 20 years ago when you were younger, starting to run your father's company, your grandfather's company, and had a weed something something? They had a joint in their car, like whatever, whatever, and that would cost thousands of dollars. Put them into some sort of rehab, and they would have to. I had a friend that had it happen to him 20 years ago. He had to, for cannabis. It cost him 6 months of his life, thousands of dollars, meetings he had to have, things he had to do in order to get a job.
I really would rather we just talk about the brand and stuff. The weedness is just a giant problem. Giant problem. Like the government and the medical world and all of the sort of
Stigma.
no, well, no, I could care less about that. Just the logical understanding of marijuana and people and society and all of that good stuff, it does not fit into like the construction industry. And once again, the world has just made some decisions and doesn't really care about the consequences or how hard
You
it is
can't
for
have people
people to.
high on a construction site, clearly,
and
any more than flying an airplane or right.
I don't have any way to really know,
Hmm.
right? Like, and that's the fundamental problem with it, because there's again, I mean, I'm probably not the best person to have this discussion. All I can tell you is, and we really definitely took a pretty hard 90 right hand turn there, but like that's a real challenge in our world that they're still trying to unpack. But
Well, the same thing would be happening for guys that were doing a shot at lunchtime too. Knowing, smelling, all. I had employees too.
right,
Over
but
the course of
that
time, and
we were fortunate that you could get a test that would tell me whether they were drinking at
I
lunch.
had NFL coaches who's well thought of NFL coaches who said to me 5, 6, 7 years ago that they came back and they coached for a period of time in the league. And he said he would go into his room and all he would smell at 9 a.m. is not just in the air emanating off of the players in a meeting, and there's nothing he could do about it. So this was a football thing. And it was a football coach's thing to say, what are you going to do when the guy's making $8 million a year and it's Wednesday morning and you're at practice and you need him to win this week? You go along with it. And I know as
Which
an employer, I've had that issue with alcohol and drugs, quite frankly. That's a baked in issue for drug testing for employers, but there is an issue for everybody in the city having a black mark on their record and can't get a job. So
I
that went on here 20 years ago, and that was something that was very, very real in my world in Dundalk where lots of folks just couldn't get a job.
I appreciate the $8 million a year player. I appreciate many of the other situations that
Well, it's
they're
a modern
creating.
prohibition, right? People want to smoke weed. People want to drink.
I
Like
know
like
what
a
is
hundred years ago, it was our grandfathers
right.
in speakeasies or whatever it was, right?
What is unbelievably frustrating is like I'm with you. All those people should be able to have jobs, and I would love to employ all of them. And for us, we just try and always keep it about the people and make good decisions around them. But the fact remains that I'm going to put 14 men 70 feet in the air doing a really hard, physically demanding job where they are responsible for the safety of one another to make sure that everybody gets home at the end of the day to their family. And now, with best intentions, that job is more and more difficult. And it's easier for people to make bad decisions that put other people at risk. So like I'm
I
boxed
loved
into
it.
a
It's the first time I've
corner,
heard this
like
conversation privately or publicly from you. So this is certainly something to consider. And listen, all the ads about not driving impaired, that goes right up to not having a hammer and a nail in your hand or a power tool, right? At the same time. And so it should be said out loud. In the same way that when I hold up lottery tickets, I say, it's a $2 lottery ticket. Don't wreck your life betting on the Ravens this week or the Orioles this week or
I love, look, I love some of the color in the picture of our lives, right? So we are literally living through this societal understanding that even though it's legal, there are times you shouldn't do it. Like you have
freedom,
to
responsibility,
right.
accountability, right?
And
All, all
and like
all that same stuff they taught us in fourth grade.
we're
And
living through
consequences and consequences.
yeah, I don't know, man. It's boy, thanks a lot, Ness.
Well,
I
don't
was totally
go
prepared
there.
to unpack that
No,
today.
no, 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 no. You never know where these things are going to go. I mean, you know what I wanted to do, and I'll wrap this segment with this, and because I threatened Leonard Raskin this week too, and I don't know how long the Orioles are going to have their little survey up, but the Orioles put out a legitimate. Did you get it on an
No,
email?
I don't think so. No, I don't think so. But
I'm on
you
their
mentioned it to
I'm
me. Yeah,
I'm not on their
yeah,
media list. I
yeah.
don't get any of the press releases. Luke has to send those over to me, and I'm still under review from the Whistler, amongst other things. But they have a survey out asking, where you are, and it's made its rounds. It's come to me a couple of times. I opted into it when I first got it 2-3 weeks ago, beginning of the month. I clicked on it, and once I clicked in, it started wanting like my salary, like it wanted some stuff. And maybe it wasn't salary, but it was like I got 2 or 3 in. And I'm like, stop. I'm gonna do this with Cole and Raskin on the air. I'm gonna do this with somebody else. So I would like to take the survey. I haven't taken it because once I go in, and I am a little afraid of doing it on the air because it might ask like where my address and stuff that like I'm not gonna make public, but I want to take it. I want to hear the questions they're asking, and I want to not crack on it. I want to like evaluate it with you because you are and I am. Leonard to some degree because he spends a little bit of money with them. Dennis would be at Coons Ford would be great too because we're all guys that love the Orioles. We all love sports. We all came together through this. 32 years into this, the Orioles were my thing, and they're trying to figure this out. They've done a really poor job with me behind the scenes. Such a poor job that I haven't even been public about how poor it's been. And I will, but I'm giving it time. I'm trying at 55, not trying to be reactive, but I am trying to see what they're doing. And this is the first survey that I've ever seen and clicked into and thought, they might listen to me if they're not going to listen to me. But I at least want to hear what they think the questions they're asking. So
Yeah, 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 yeah.
does that make any sense?
Sure. I mean, if you want to play around, we can. It doesn't bother
I'm
me.
not going to do it right now. I will do it
Okay.
next week.
Okay.
Because I want to make it its own thing. And we got the Yankees, we got the Astros this week, and We had so much fun this week, right? I mean, this was a great week for Baltimore, and I think that that's what I've talked about on Monday and Tuesday, all the way around in the
Yeah.
aftermath, and you and I in the middle of it last Friday, and now reconvening in the aftermath of all of it. But more fleet weeks, more Preaknesses, more people downtown, more AFRAMs, more festivals, more artscapes, more Little Italy festivals, more fleet, Fells Point festivals, more of all of that is it's good to bring people together and get them out and about mixing.
Did you know that you could play golf in Camden Yards 2 weeks ago?
I saw everybody doing that. Yeah, I'm not a golfer, and I saw everybody going down there
Whatever.
and muscling. I don't know what they paid to do it or whatever, but it just it cracks me up. Just if you're a golfer, that's who you are, and hitting the ball as far as you can and seeing it and having
No,
and
no, no,
wearing the right
no,
gloves and wearing the right
no,
hat
no,
and all that
no,
stuff.
no, no.
If you're a
Don't think
golfer,
about it that way. Don't think about it that way. I can appreciate the what's the word I'm looking traditionalist that you are in the baseball kind of sense, and the idea that that seems sort of hokey or silly. All it made me think of was like under old ownership
that would
and
never happen, right?
yeah, like it was a closed piece of property that did not invigorate the city except for 80 whatever one nights a year. And then as that went away, then you got literally nothing. You couldn't have a concert. They did, the warehouse isn't activated. Like that's a huge piece of land, that doesn't get activated and doesn't get utilized. And I just that was my I'm with you. I don't know how
Except when the
hokey
Pope and
that
Billy
whole
Joel
thing
come to
is.
town,
Right.
Paul McCartney, right? Literally.
There were very few exceptions, which also creates an element of exclusivity and excitement, and I can appreciate that. But uh if there's one thing I've learned going to these other cities, and I think the people in the know in Baltimore are definitely leaning on, is activating the space, activating the landscape around the buildings, activating the rooftops and the
Well, look, the
courtyard.
marathon sought to do that, right? And there's been all sorts of 5Ks and 10Ks that start at the stadium. The Orioles have had overnight sleeps where you watch movies on the screen, and the Ravens have gotten in on that too. I mean, part of opening those stadia is that it's expensive to open the doors, right?
Sure,
Like that's part of the issue. To open the doors for 800 people to come in and watch a movie sounds cool, makes a nice video, but it doesn't make financial sense for anybody in
but it
some way.
is but it is an element of public safety that isn't obvious, right? And you see that undertone with the stuff that they're talking about in the inner harbor redevelopment and stuff like that. Like if there are thousands of people walking around, like crime goes down, right?
Well,
Like
that
you
also
like
makes conventions go up, and
sure.
the whole percolation of all of it begins. And I listen. I'll drop the mic on this, and this will be a great segue to next week and us doing the Oriole survey. Right?
Okay.
I just released this 25th anniversary documentary. You can go back through all of my life and Free the Birds, specifically, of which I'm known for. Nasty Nestor did Free the Birds. He's an a-hole. He hated Peter. Like all of that. No, no, no. I bought in 2003 and put all of my money, all of my life into the line to have this view that people can see on the YouTube. And I watched it deteriorate. And I watched the baseball team be at the centerpiece of that, that the baseball team brought 50,000 people downtown 80 times a year. And then it became less than that, and then less than that, and then less than that, to the point where, and then I get thrown out for speaking the truth. And we're in a kayfabe, dude. You know what I mean? Like this new guy that owns the team wants to pretend the last 30 years didn't happen and that none of this happened. You have to acknowledge what happened here and the significance of the baseball team, to your point, and the stadium and the space. That stadium and that warehouse were supposed to host dinner parties, weddings, bar mitzvahs, off-season events. Boog's Barbecue was supposed to be 365 a year. You were supposed to be able to walk on that promenade and picnic, bring your people down. They were going to have Christmas trees and Santa Claus there, and they should have been setting up the German beer garden there and all the things that they did.
Yeah.
Never happened because of the creep that owned the team. And I can't, he's dead, talk bad, all whatever. He never punched down and all that. Dude, it was an abortion. Now, let's fix it. But part of it is the baseball team was the centerpiece of all of it before the football team existed, before any of it happened, before the football stadium existed, when it was a parking lot. This was about sports, the baseball team, the legend of Brooks and Cal and Eddie and like all of that, and then hotels, bringing Oriole fans to Baltimore, bringing visiting fans, bringing baseball fans, bringing tourists to Baltimore and showing them, oh, there's same thing the Phillies fans saw over the weekend. There's history. There's Fort McHenry. There's a science center. There's an aquarium. There's kid stuff. There's adult stuff. There's bars. There's restaurants. There's walking. There's safety. There's parks. There's snowballs. There's crabs. There's crab cakes. There's a harbor. You can swim in it. Maybe. So, but baseball, for me, last name Aparicio, been here for all of it, was in the news for 40 years. Baseball was the straw that stirred the drink. The reason last weekend was awesome, Fleet Week's cool. The reason last weekend was awesome is because the baseball team made it awesome. The baseball team being great, the Phillies timing being great, Fleet Week being great, it being well thought out, and then well executed by two good baseball teams and a fan base 90 miles away that came down here and filled the city and then filled the ballpark with energy. And I pointed this out to Luke. If they were playing the Braves last weekend, it couldn't have happened. If they were playing any other team, they're playing the Mets last weekend. They're playing the Yankees over the weekend. If they were playing the Red Sox over the weekend, they're playing the Nationals, and they've been trying this Nationals thing. It was really special because it was Philadelphia and Baltimore and the 1983 World Series and Fleet Week, and the fact that the stadium was full led to the best weekend of the summer. The best weekend of the summer in Baltimore has to involve a full stadium in the city. That's free the birds, bro. That's free the birds 20 years later, right there.
Well, I mean, you're right. I would not disagree with any of that. Well, I don't know. I'd have to go all the way back through with a fine-tooth comb to see.
If the Ravens were home over the weekend, it wouldn't have been this good because it wouldn't have been 3 days. It wouldn't have been people coming down and filling the hotels. Like, it was a perfect storm last weekend. But that's what baseball can do. That's what good civic planning can do. And that's what the bones of our city can present for people of all races, colors, and creeds. I didn't even mention pride, dude. My wife and I left Costello's party at 9:15. We were starving. And we're like, let's go to Clavel. Because you've been to Clavel?
No.
Dude, you like tacos?
Sure.
You like booze? Yeah, yes. I'm going to take you and your wife to Clavel. It's 25th Street, Howard and 23rd, like around there, just north of like North Avenue, and award-winning. It's phenomenal. I mean, we go once a year. Dude, it's $5 tacos, and they're, So we went to go, and we're like, all right, how are we going to get there? Game was way over. Took 83. I fished around 83, jumped on 83, got off. I got off of 83 North Avenue, and we pulled right into the Pride Festival. And this is the Baltimore in me. This is 9:15. There's a whirly bird in the sky with the spotlight out, and you can hear the announcer. The party is over. Please disperse. The event has concluded. Please disperse. The event. And I got the window open. I'm like, oh, man, I hope. First thing you think, somebody's been shot. Where are the cops? Where are the whirly birds? All the pride people are like trying to get to the train, under the viaduct at North Avenue in 83, people in the streets everywhere. And I said to my wife, we escaped the Phillies traffic. We just pulled into Pride traffic at 9:15 and the event's ending. And I thought something bad. I said, this might've been a mistake. What a mistake. Pull up to the red light. People are drunk. Pride people are drunk. It was out in the street, 9:00 at night. We made a left turn. We pulled up a block. Everybody's gone. Bunch of young girls out in the street having a good time, being city people. It was 9:15. We parked in front door Clavel, went in, had tacos, ripped it up. Didn't get a drink because I was driving. Came home, but we pulled a mile and a half away from Fleet Week away from Costello's party, away from 50,000 Phillies fans, only to run into another 20,000 people that were partying in Pride. Nothing went bad. Nothing went right. It was just the party was over. It was 9 o'clock. It was dark. They're like, it's a 5 to 9 party. It's 9:15. Go home. You're drunk.
Yeah.
It was
I,
literally that.
that's a
And
great, it's a great sign
we
because
had a
when,
we had a great night in Baltimore. And my
right,
wife's in a cast. She's hobbling around. So like, don't tell me my city sucks.
right, it's a
Don't
great
tell me
sign.
that.
All these places I've been where we've learned about cities and all the good stuff they did, the very first indicator that it's working is the locals all start complaining about traffic. Because that's like the first thing, right? Like you do all this really good stuff, you draw all this attention, everyone starts coming, and then they
I
forgot
began the
what it was
show
like to have
Friday pissed
traffic,
off at
right?
how much it
It's
was going to cost
traffic.
me to park in Fells Point.
Right.
Yeah. So, I remember going down to
Right.
Fells Point and wanting to run for mayor when I had 3 hobos chasing me down the street trying to sell me $1 parking ticket on a Friday night when my wife was
Right,
bald.
right,
So
right, right,
that's
right.
what began Baltimore Positive was something negative. So that's fine. But I'm telling you, Baltimore's we got bones, dude. We're coming back, and we're all going to be a part of this. And the baseball team better be a part of it, and the football team better get in on it. And so yeah. And we'll begin that by taking the Orioles survey next week. Is that good?
Yeah, I hope we continue to get tired and bored of having this same conversation about how awesome the weekend was. Like, I'm totally in for that being the repeat conversation that we just continue to
All
have.
right. And
So
look,
I'm very
because I'm
excited.
out pimping cannabis education and talking about products, like I'm going to show you this thing here, this Move product, this works from Curio Wellness, right? So I put this on my spine, really helps me out, especially if I'm sitting a long period of time. So like I hear that, but there's also gummies over here that would put me on the moon and would not allow me to do my job this afternoon. So I do point taken. All right. Is that good? Point
Yes,
taken.
sir.
All right, there he
Appreciate
is,
it.
Bill Cole. Cole Roofing, Gordian Energy. He gets on roofs. He fixes solar. By the way, dude, before we break,
Yeah,
I got my BGE bill this month.
yeah,
It's like I know a guy in solar and I might have land. You and I
yeah.
should talk. I'm just saying. Bill Cole is Cole Roofing. You can find him on the front of BaltimorePositive.com. Pimping the city last week and next week taking the Orioles fan survey. I am Nestor. We are WNST AM 1570, Towson, Baltimore. We never stop talking how awesome Baltimore Positive is. Stay with us.